hockey. Yeah.
My favorite.
It's Judd's Hockey Show.
And welcome into Judd's Hockey Show. It is Judd and AJ Fredrickson who regularly co-host as well. Of course, Declan Goff, Jesse Pierce, a cast of thousands. But I wanted to talk to AJ to react to what was a awful road trip for the Wild, East Coast trip that included a loss to Philadelphia. Dex and I talked about that on Friday's episode if you missed it. So it started off with a no-show in Philly, which was terrible. Friday night, then they come back and lose in overtime. So they do get a point against the Washington Capitals, which, by the way, the Washington Capitals are no longer the team that they used to be. They definitely have their deficiencies, but in a shootout, actually, not OT. It went to OT as well, but the Wild lose that game. And then they come back with a loss last night in a regulation to the Devils, a very good team, a very good power play. The Wild's penalty kill continues to be bad. The Wild's power play continues to be bad. And AJ, I want to start there, okay? There's a lot to get to here. Kirill Kaprizov's play, which has not been up to the standard that we are used to, but I want to start on special teams. So right now, the Wild is 22nd out of 32 teams in the National Hockey League. Their power play percentage is 13.9%. The first power play now has Hartman has replaced Johansson, who replaced Boldy, who's supposed to start practicing again on Wednesday. So Boldy was not demoted. He got hurt. Johansson then got the first power play spot in place of Boldy. And now Johansson's been taken off in favor of Hartman, Kalen Addison, Eriksson Ek, Zuccarello, and Kaprizov. What is up with, and we've complained about this for a while, and they were doing it again on Sunday to the point where Dean started to talk about it as well. What is up with trying to set up the perfect play, the lack of movement? I mean, they have a new power play coach now. This was supposed to help solve things. This power play looks absolutely lifeless so far.
Yeah, I think I'm finally ready to admit that I was just inconceivably wrong with our preseason show where I was talking about this power play would be a top 10 one in the league because it just looks abysmal right now. It's a lot of standing around. It's a lot of hoping and praying that the opposing penalty kill is just going to magically remove themselves from a passing lane just because. You saw it yesterday against the Devils. You had back-to-back power plays. And then the second one was like just a consistent 2 minutes, no break, just offensive zone possession time. You have these 4 penalty killers from the Devils who are just gassed, dead tired. They don't even want, they could lay down and it'd be as effective as them just standing there. But we're refusing to see the Wild move the puck in any urgent, like purposeful way. You're just hoping and you're sitting and we saw like Zuccarello at one point, he was up on the right defensive spot and he's just kind of sitting there waiting, like slowly creeping in. It's like, move the puck. Don't wait for the one, like you're telegraphing. I'm looking at the back of your head, but I know exactly what you're doing. You're looking and you're waiting for Kaprizov on the back door to somehow that passing lane suddenly going to be open. Why are we not moving the puck more? You watch some of these other teams. You watch the Devils. They scored and they make it look easy at times. It's quick movement.
Tic-tac-toe.
It's beautiful to watch.
Absolutely, yeah.
And it's something that I'm sure Devils fans love and appreciate watching because they go to the power play with even a sliver of hope that, hey, we're going to make something happen. It's getting to the point for the Wild where just take off the 2 minutes because they're not going to do anything, and that takes away any chance of a shorthanded break the other way for whoever's killing the penalty. So I don't know what needs to happen here, Judd, other than to just get in the room and have a heart-to-heart conversation saying, guys, this is terrible. We need to fix it, and you actually have to work when you're out there. Because at this point, I'm not going to say you should throw everybody off the side and totally shake things up because the people that are on the power play probably should be on the power play given their skill set. But we need to have a serious conversation about the lack of production. It's terrible that they get a power play. And I'm like, I have no hope. I have no hope. I was sitting there. I'm like, okay, this is the time I'm going to get up and go to the bathroom or something because nothing's going to happen.
Okay. So that being said, and we could talk about Boldy to Johansson to Hartman, blah, blah, blah. That being said, if you're Dean, don't you have to consider taking Zuccarello off of it? Because here's the thing. Kaprizov, first of all, and I know he's a quote unquote slow starter, okay? But he's playing some for him, and we know what he can do. Dead ass hockey. Zuccarello, to your point, his insistence on trying to make cute plays and passing. You know what his problem is? He tries to make plays with like the very, very small amount of guys in this league. And Gretzky, for instance, had this, right? Who see the play a second before it happens. Only Zuccarello doesn't. He just thinks he does. So like he's passing into sure interceptions of his passes and breakups because he's like, I see something. It's like, no, dude, you actually don't. Like shoot the damn puck yourself. But I think this comes down to that. I think I'm not going to take Kaprizov off my first PP. To me, that's going way too far. He's too talented and he's got to snap out of this. But I do want to snap him out of this. And I guess my question is, what's Zuccarello done that, deserves, well, he has to play with Kirill? Forget this whole thing of Ryan Hartman's now on PP1. Okay, forget that. Take Matt Zuccarello off of the power play, at least for a few games, and say, dude, until you start to do what we want here, which is not trying to be, Wayne Gretzky, you're going to be, you and Kirill don't just automatically, because you've attached yourself like Velcro to him, you don't automatically get to play together. I think it's pretty simple.
I agree. If you're going to have to wean them off of each other in a sense, you start with the power play. You're not going to do it in your 5-on-5 lines because we just know that would be the equivalent of like the world ending at this point. So you're going to start with the power play. I say just do what seems to be a pretty even swap in terms of both size, and at this point, maybe not skill, but the effort from the second guy is so far in a way higher than what I'm seeing out of Matt Zuccarello. Marco Rossi. They're both a smaller stature guy. They both have a knack for moving the puck well. Rossi is on that second power play unit. I want to see him get more time and get the luxury of getting out there for that first look when it's a full 2 minutes. Because if you throw him in that position on the left side, you're going to have a quick-minded individual who has that playmaking ability, but also he has the knack of, if I have a shot, I'm going to take it. I'm not looking if I think, I have. Move Marco Rossi, give him that chance, because right now you're not going to see him on the first line. And granted, Ryan Hartman, his subtlety, the hat trick against the Oilers, he's been coming on. Despite some eye test stuff, the metrics are there. He's averaging per 60 minutes, 2.5 points a night, almost 3 points a night. And that's the metrics. The finishing, I think, is at times what pulls him back a little bit. And that's where my criticisms of him are, of being on that top line center. But even Joel Eriksson-Ek has been a phenomenal center for this team so far to start the season. Maybe not phenomenal is the word, but he has very much impressed me. So I understand you having him on that top line as well. But Matt Zuccarello, he comes off. You're going to get Marco Rossi right in that wing spot where Zuccarello's setting up. He's mobile. He's quick. He's got the mind to keep up with what your first power play should be. And because he's still so hungry, and this start that we've seen from him after being buried in the minors for the past 2 years, he is so hungry to say, I am cementing my spot in this lineup. He's going to produce points whether you think he's going to or not. They're going to come if you put Marco Rossi on the top power play unit.
Yeah, and yes, Dean was furious after the game against the Flyers, which was an awful game. But, he brought up possibly promoting Marco to the top line then. And that's 5-on-5, which I love because of this. What Ryan Hartman is doing, he can do on the third line. He is not necessarily, and aside from the Oilers game, which by the way, they play no defense. Okay. So that's that game is a bit of a rope-a-dope because, don't think, oh my God, look at how they looked against that's not repeatable unless you play teams that don't care about defense, and the Oilers for the most part. I don't know why I don't, but one, I love this idea on the power play because of this. When you set up the power play, the way that Zuccarello tries to play is like a center because Eriksson-Ek is the net front presence. So he's fine there. That's his job. He's good at that. But Rossi would actually be, I love your idea. He could be a perfect replacement for Mats because Mats is trying to facilitate. That's all he wants to do, in fact. And to your point, Marco Rossi will actually shoot the puck when he should. But I mean, I think that there is no question that Kirill Kaprizov needs a wake-up call. And again, I'm not going to punish his playing time. I don't think that works. And he is just so clearly your best player that unless he sort of played dead ass for about 2 months, I'm not going to punish him, but I am going to take away his buddy. And his buddy, I think, causes issues as well. And so I love that. Marco Rossi, first power play. I also would have 5-on-5. I would be tempted to break up Zuccarello and Kaprizov, but to your point, I also think that my first move would be to move Hartman to the third line, which, by the way, would become a great line. Like if you think about the guys on that line works its ass off, and allow Rossi to play with Zuccarello and Kaprizov, and then to tell Mats, dude, we don't need you to set up cute plays for Kirill, right? Because Marco Rossi can set him up now. Like that's the problem is Ryan Hartman is probably more of a wing. Marco Rossi looks like a kid that can play center and shoot the puck. So that's the, what is Dean doing besides mixing up defensive pairings and occasionally lines, but not consistently? What has Dean done so far to sort of jolt a team that is now 3-4-2, and unfortunately has sort of fallen into the exact same type of start that they had a year ago, which I think everyone said, I can't happen, is too strong. But I think following the shutout of Florida to start the season, everybody thought that this start to the season would at least be different.
Yeah, what a tease that game was. I mean, you saw great goaltending. You saw the offense come through. Defensively, they look solid. Since then, not as much. And you mentioned, like, what has Dean done? I think he's slowly but surely giving correct guys the more ice time. Not to just continue on the Rossi celebratory train here, but in the first 5 games, he was averaging about 13 minutes per night on ice. Past 3 games, he's up to about 15 and a half minutes. So he's slowly getting more and more of that spotlight, which I really enjoy to see. That being said, on the other side of things, we're still seeing John Merrill out there a little too much because he has been not great. You can't hide him, though, is a thing.
Because they miss Spurgeon so much.
Exactly. And so
you're right.
As much as I want Boldy to be back, as quick as possible, I'm almost hoping that you can somehow get Jared Spurgeon, who you're not going to, just because he is he was retroactively put on the LTIR, so I'm not sure exactly what the timeline is there, but that's never good. When it comes to getting a jolt here, and you said the start last year is looking similar, I know they're hurt or they're missing pretty key guys, but there's really no excuse to like dropping some of these games as poorly as they are and how poorly they've looked in certain games. The special teams needs to be better, and I think that's a big contributor because if you're going to be bad at one, you have to be good at the other, right? I think that's the trade-off, in my mind at least. And right now, they're just pretty darn bad at both.
The penalty kill, to your point. So the power play is clicking, and I use that word very lightly, at a 13.9% again, which is 22nd. The penalty kill is 31st, second to last in the league. 9 power play goals allowed on 28 chances against, 67 against 67.8%. And I saw this in Russo's game story in The Athletic off the Devils game today. In the playoffs, if those stats sound familiar, in the playoffs where the penalty kill was atrocious against Dallas, they allowed 9 power play goals on 24 chances. So, and I know Goudreau's out. And I saw that he might miss as much as a month thanks to that Ryan Reeves hit that he absorbed in Toronto. But yeah, the special teams, and like you went out and hired for your PP this Jason King, who had been a Canucks assistant coach, to come in and fix your power play. We've talked about that. The penalty kill is absolutely atrocious, and some of that also comes down to this, and this is where. Certainly all the blame does not lie on the goaltenders, but that's the other thing. We're like off to that start again where you're watching this team and the goaltending, it's not all to blame, but it's certainly not great, which is to what you were saying before, where the tease of the first game with Gustafsson was so strong. It's just, I don't understand. And I saw today again in Russo's piece about, the team and players talking about the same exact thing as a year ago. We're missing our swagger. Where's that swagger? How's this happening 2 years in a row? Like, swagger means you're not playing hard, basically. Swagger is not, we should be scoring 10 goals a game. Swagger is like, stick to it in the game. So, like, where the heck is this? What's going on here? And a year ago, if you recall, around Thanksgiving, they finally went out and got Ryan Reeves. Well, I thought Pat Maroon was supposed to fix that. It's all very confusing to me how we end up back in the same exact spot. And yes, it's early, but you can't dismiss these points. Like, these points in the spring will become important at some point, especially with what we expect to be the cluster that is going to be the Western Conference playoff race.
Yeah, this is always the fear when you have the start that they've had. Sure, you get the nice win over the Panthers opening night, but now you're dropping points. You go 0 for 7 in the shootout to lose to the Capitals when you, expected goals-wise, should have beat them by about 5. And Marc-Andre Fleury, I'm not going to say he put on a masterclass in the shootout.
It was a really good game. You're right.
It was a good game by him. He even in regular the first 3 periods, he looked really good as well. And you can't muster out a win with some crappy garbage goal, just, something ugly off the backside of like Brandon
Darcy
Brewer or
Kemper
something.
looked like Kenny Dryden, my man.
These points that you're dropping and you're missing are come late February, early March. Those are the points where you're like, if we would have picked up that extra that point against the Capitals, if we would have just looked halfway decent against the Philadelphia Flyers, we'd be 2 points clear of who the Kings in the wild card right now. Blah blah blah.
Correct.
It's really frustrating because I don't know exactly what needs to happen. Like you said, the Pat Maroon signing should have sort of been the replacement for Ryan Reeves, and I want to give credit to Pat Maroon because he is, in my mind, exceeded expectations through this first, open to the season. He's been a little physical, but more so, he's been offensive. Like he's helping in the offensive zone a lot more than I expected him to. I thought that part of his
He's
career
got some
was,
skill.
Well, yeah, he was sunsetting, but he has surprised me with just what he kind of has in his bag of tricks. When it comes to the goalies here, you mentioned this, and let me throw a stat out for you here. When it comes to goalies that qualify with 2 or more games played, you have the tandem of Marc-Andre Fleury and Philip Gustafsson, 7th and 8th, as worst goals saved above expected. So Marc-Andre Fleury minus 3.8, Philip Gustafsson minus 3.6. When you take out the 2 guys that have 2 games there, Dan Vladar and Samuel Ersson with the Flyers there, they bump up to 5 and 6. Like it's not just one bad goalie, so you're trying to duck and you get that. Gus has had a bad start to the season. I think we expected maybe Flower to be, I'm not going to say he's in his farewell tour and he's packing it in, but he has not had a few good performances other than the shutout that he had up in Montreal. So it's tough to have 2 bad goalies. I'm not going to say 2 bad goalies, but 2 goalies performing under what they're expected to. Plus, you're missing one of your top defensemen. And then on top of that, when you need goals, your power play is not doing anything. You said clicking at 13% for them. Maybe that is clicking. If we get up to 15%, watch out. I'm going to get excited. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's yes.
Yeah. It just everything that is not going right is not going right. They're actively working against themselves, it seems like at times, because they're not able to pick up the slack where they should be picking up the slack. And it's really hard to win hockey games, especially against halfway to somewhat above average teams, let alone the Devils. You're not going to beat them if you're not able to do anything on the special teams and your goalie's not able to, make one of those saves that's like, wow, that's a huge stop. You're missing out on a lot of these chances. One thing I mentioned earlier in the show here is the finishing ability of Ryan Hartman at times. There was a chance on the back door. All you have to do is just get the puck up an inch or 2 off the ice, and he's not able to even find the cage. Like, you're putting it wide from a stick lengths out. There are times where I'm just astonished sitting on my couch watching where I'm like, I feel like other teams aren't going through this. And maybe it's just, I feel like I watch a lot of hockey, but when you have your top line guys not converting on specific, blatant, wide open chances like that, they come back to haunt you. And that's when you lose to the Capitals in a shootout. That's when you lose to the Flyers on the road. And granted, they lost 4-3. They made it a game late, but I don't know at any time I felt like they were in firm control other than maybe opening the second period when they scored that first goal. But then, a matter of 2 minutes later, they get scored on the power play, and then it's a back-to-back goal. I'm like, okay, well, now it's like an avalanche.
And Jake Middleton should not have to score the 4-3 goal.
No.
That's the other thing. He's like, screw it, and came down the slot and scored a goal that that your winger should score. On your Gus point too, that's a good one because Philip Gustafsson is your primary goaltender, and he needs to play well. Like regression happens, but it's not an option here.
No.
Because you can't tell. Now what the last two games because. He did play well against the Capitals on Friday. Marc-Andre Fleury starts 2 consecutive games, but that can't become a habit. He is in the twilight of his career. He's winding things down. He's pursuing the Patrick Waugh or the wins mark to move into second place all time. That's awesome. That's great. But if Philip Gustafsson, I'm far more concerned about that because 1, he did have the great opening night, but 2, he is your goaltender. He's the guy that you have to ride. And if he regresses, it opens up a lot of question marks, especially if you don't think that Wallstedt is prepared to play up here yet. And it certainly appears that they don't feel that way, that they definitely want him to get another year in Iowa of the American Hockey League. But that one would be a major concern. And I guess here's my last question. How much do you put on Spurgeon's return? Because I certainly think it helps. I also don't think that we should get over our skis with when Jared Spurgeon returns, it's all fixed. What do you think?
No, you're right with that. It's not going to be a tree trunk in the beaver dam, but it's going to be more than just a couple of twigs, Right now, to stick on that analogy, water's rushing through with what seems no obstacle. But this is going to at least shore it up. Instead of being waist-high water, it's going to be shin-high. And it's going to be easier to traverse from shore to shore. So that's going to help the Wild maybe take away their worry where they can focus on some of the offensive aspects a little bit more. And, you only have so many points of interest that you can focus on a daily basis in practice. And when you have what seems like right now a lot to cover, getting Jared Spurgeon back, I think just making that swap 1-for-1 and getting him back in the lineup more consistently is going to help. But it's not going to be like all of a sudden they have a full NHL all-star defensive core back there. You're still going to have Jonas Brodin doing his thing. I've been very pleased with Brock Faber. Kalen Addison has also stepped it up a little bit as well defensively. It's still very, very, very bad at times. But but at times you're also like, well, you just made a really good stick interception. Like, where did that come from?
Your issue with him is this. If the power play continues to scuffle, what's his role really?
And that's where I'm nervous about too, because I had that thought yesterday was he made like 1 or 2 stops very late where they were trying to protect the empty net. And, he saved would have been a dagger. But we don't see that, I think, enough to where with how bad this power play is that Dean and the rest of the, because we know maybe Dean's unofficial feelings towards him already. Right. We've known this, but there's not enough of that play to solidify him continuously getting that if the power play continues to just drag their feet as the season progresses here. So one of those is going to have to give. Either they're going to have to really step it up and he's going to have to take charge and start producing more. And granted, it's not all on him because he can only do so much out there on the power play. But for a guy whose whole role and embodiment of NHL hockey is I am the power play quarterback, it needs to step up a little bit. So as a Kalen Addison fan club guy, I really need that to start kicking in because otherwise I'm nervous that he's going to be up in the press box having hot dogs with the rest of us.
Yeah, if this does not improve, I think when Spurgeon comes back, and I know that we could talk about Merrill and the third pairings, we could certainly discuss that. But I have a feeling that it wouldn't be surprising to see a different quarterback on the power play, and Kalen is going to be sitting by us eating popcorn. I wish we had better news, but ladies and gentlemen, we talk about the facts here on JHS, and the facts are the Wild is right now playing some lousy hockey. Back with Declan and Jesse Pierce on Wednesday for another JHS. Age, great stuff. As always, we'll talk to you soon as well. Thanks for watching.